The White Album, November 22nd, 1968, first record.
The Beatles Come to America. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Episode 14, The White Album, the first record. Welcome to the Beatles Come to America podcast. I am your host, Tom Gouker, along with that Beatle Guru Brooke Halpin. The Beatles dropped a big Christmas gift for us this time. It's the White Album, released on November 22nd, 1968. This album is so big we had to chop it in half. Before we can get into this interview, we do have some housekeeping notes, so let's get into it. I have a podcast. It's called Something Came from Baltimore, which is a music interview podcast, more jazz and R&B and blues. And it's not just about Baltimore, but we want you to subscribe, and the link is in the show notes. The Beatle Guru Brooke Halpin is all-knowing when it comes to the Beatles, and he sweats the Beatle DNA. Follow him on his Facebook page, Come Together with the Beatles and Brooke Halpin. The link is in the show notes. Also, we have our own Facebook page called The Beatles Come to America. And what we're asking you to do is rank the U.S. albums from best to worst. And trust me, it's really hard. It's not easy. And as a bonus, at the end of every episode of The Beatles Come to America, we have a Brooke Halpin original song. So you want to stay for that. And we hope you subscribe, participate, enjoy. And just remember, we love the Beatles. So love us in the comments and enjoy our other creative projects. It's episode 14, The White Album, the first record. It's going to be a long day. It sounds like. Okay, we got that first album to talk about. We're at the Beatles Coming to America. I just have some real brief notes on all this stuff, so I'm going to let you fly. One thing I can't believe about this whole album is that Sgt. Pepper and the White Album had no singles whatsoever, and that to me is mind-blowing. They're the number one singles artist, and then they have albums that are massively huge, and not one of them are singles. I think it's kind of wild.
But that's what they wanted. They felt as though that they release a single, and then the single is then on an album. They felt as though that they were cheating their fans because they already had the single. That was their way of thinking. It makes sense if you look at it that way. Of course, they didn't do that in the beginning. In the beginning, they were just so wrapped up in Beatlemania and traveling and touring and recording and making the Hard Day's Night, etc. But once they got more into recording, and then especially, of course, when they started their own record label, they had more control over what they were doing as opposed to what Capitol was doing. You know, we talked about how Capitol repackaged the albums that were called one name in the UK, and then they changed it and called it another name in the U.S., and they didn't include certain songs that were included on Rubber Soul, et cetera, et cetera. That's the way they wanted it. I know that George Martin said it was, quote-unquote, a big mistake not to have Hey Jude on the Beatles White Album. But you know what? We already had Hey Jude. Hey Jude was released in late August, and this came out in November, on November 22nd. So we don't need to have this on the album. You know, we were all digging and grooving on Hey Jude for 2 or 3 months already. You see, that's the way the Beatles were thinking. And you know what? I agree with that. It makes the albums even more special.
Oh, I agree. And I respect it, but I'm looking at it as a historian. I'm like, okay, they had 27 number ones, right? So if they released 4 to 5 songs off this album, that's 4 to 5 more number ones, along with Sgt. Pepper's. I'm looking at it as like a horse race. Like, you know, this is a number one hit. It's not released as a single. Or where was I at yesterday? And they were playing an album track like it was just like, oh, you're going to lose that girl. They were playing it on the oldies AM radio station. And I'm like, that's not a single. They could easily have flooded the market with all these singles. I'm glad they didn't. And then at this point, you know, I'm looking at it after the fact. We always like to do this as your impression when you first got it and what the album cover looks like. So I'm going to stop talking and you can go ahead.
Well, I had a copy right here in my hand, Tom. It was given to me as a birthday present on December 1st, 1968. But here it is. So looking at it, and it has a serial number on it. My serial number, unfortunately, is not low. And what's really fascinating is my girlfriend at the time, Elaine, bless her heart, who gave this to me, the number I have is 1,566,523. That means that she bought, this is the 1,566,523. This is the copy, right? This is how many copies. So in 1 week's time, right, they sold over 1 million copies. I didn't, when I first got the album, I didn't know what the hell it was because you couldn't even see the name. And even on the, on the side of the album, when you slide it in with your stack of albums, you can see the name of the album, the group. There's nothing. There's no name on the side. And then you look carefully and you'll see the Beatles in raised print, as I call it, also in white. And I thought, good God, what is this? Because last thing I saw was the Magical Mystery Tour album, where you want to talk about density of graphic design and colors and explosion of all types of visuals. There's nothing here. And it was Paul's idea. People think it was John and Yoko's, which would make more sense because, John and Yoko were more into the avant-garde, especially because Yoko was at that time. But this was Paul's idea. He wanted to do something entirely different from the Sgt. Pepper and Magical Mystery Tour album. And boy, did he get it. He got it in spades. So, and then I opened up the album. I'm opening it up now. This thing is really falling apart. And then you see the list of songs on the left. And then on the right are the black and white photos of the same photographs that came with it. As you probably know, there's beautiful color photographs of all four Beatles. And then I'll tell you this time, I have the original poster, with all the lyrics on the back. And then the poster is a collage of all these different photographs of the individual Beatles. And then I hear the jet noise going on. Oh boy, this is exciting. And then we'll get into the first track. But really, the Richard Hamilton is he was the leading gallery owner in London at the time, and the idea of having the number stamped in the art world is it's called limited editions. In other words, when you buy a piece of art, you might be getting, if it's a clay, there's a limited number of prints that the artist will make, and you get maybe number or whatever 102 out of 300 prints, and then after 300 copies, they stop selling it, and that's why they call it a limited edition. And of course, the idea of putting the number on these albums as a limited edition, again, a gallery idea, Richard Hamilton's idea, makes a lot of sense. But there were no limited numbers. They were going to keep printing these albums, of course, as long as people were buying them. So it was kind of ridiculous. But it did fit into the gallery scene, the avant-garde gallery scene at the time. So those are some of my first impressions and thoughts on the White Album before we get into the individual tracks. And I will say this, that it's interesting that when you listen to the opening of Pepper, it's Paul and the band, inviting you, right, to sing along with Sgt. Pepper. And then the opening track from the next album, Magical Mystery Tour, again, roll up for the Magical Mystery Tour. It's an invitation, right? So now this going from a band and an audience to the sounds of a bus on Magical Mystery Tour. Now we're hearing the sounds of a jet airplane. The album certainly is the most eclectic album ever made by the Beatles, but what's interesting too, Revolver is probably just as eclectic as the White Album. But everyone always cites the White Album as being the most eclectic. Well, probably because it has more songs on it. But really, when you think about Revolver, you go from Love You Too to Yellow Submarine to Eleanor Rigby to Tomorrow Never Knows I mean, come on, that's pretty eclectic, wouldn't you say?
I actually feel it's just it was overkill. Like they were bombarded with so much visuals, and once that the Sergeant Pepper came out and Magical Mystery Tour and the clothing line that they even had and the whole Indian vibe, that they were hit hard as like cultural icons for all these musical styles and visuals and etc. And they're like, look, we just got these scaled back, back to basics kind of songs. We're exhausted. We can't create the next fashion wave along with the music wave. We're just going to give you a blank page. And this is kind of like a bootleg, a copy of who we are.
Well, I just wanted to say one other thing about the cover is that it was shocking. I mean, it was such an extreme. It was really a shock at the time because no one had ever seen anything like this before. Again, the Beatles being the innovators that they were. Talk about innovation and doing something new and different. Amen. A blank white album cover. Incredible.
It blew everyone else away because they're like, wait a minute, our new album cover just has this, caps and weird wizards and stuff. Now we got to scrap it. It's like
Exactly.
you can't keep up with these guys.
That's right.
Back in the USSR is the first song, and it's a collage between Chuck Berry, Back in the USA, and the Beach Boys. Again, this would be to me a single. I find this to be an amazing, amazing Beatles song. I want this to be a single. I would project that it would be a #1 single. Okay, so what's your thoughts on this song?
Now, we're going to go through each track with the underpinning, the foundation, that, in my opinion, that this is the Beatles' avant-garde album. And the cover, straight away, told us that what you're going to hear inside this is unlike anything you've ever heard before, and it's nothing like what you have heard previously. And that was the clue. The cover was the clue that this is going to be an album of surprises, and it is the avant-garde Beatle album, okay? That being said, back in the USSR, Ringo had quit the band. You think about that. Now, here's the Beatles in 1968, the most popular band in the entire world. And Ringo quits the band, which nobody knew about at the time. When I listened to this track on December 1st, 1968, I listened to it and said, okay, so that's Ringo drumming. I mean, who else could it be other than Ringo? Ringo always played the drums. But as we found out as time went by, Ringo quit the band. And they were not about, John and Paul and George were not about to stop production because Ringo had quit. And McCartney had played drums for the Beatles for quite a while, or for a stint in Germany when they were between drummers. So McCartney knew how to play drums, as he still does. So, as it turns out, we have 3 drummers on this song, not just Paul. We have 3. We have 3 drummers, and we have 3 bass players. I mean, this is the thickest in terms of a production, in terms of sound. I mean, this thing is so thick, and you've got that pounding piano, and yeah, it's a great song. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Paul wrote it, of course. I mean, you've got Paul playing most of the drums, but then John played drums, and George also played drums. And then you have John playing bass, Paul playing bass, and George playing bass. 3 bass players. I mean, this is ridiculous. Why do they need all that? I have no idea. I don't know why. I can understand the drums. Maybe they all wanted to play a little bit, and they did what they call a composite track. It's got such a big sound to it. So, yeah, it's a great song. Could have been a single, sure. But they didn't need it. They didn't need to do a single because the album obviously was a bestseller at the time. They didn't need a single to help record sales, that's for sure.
Yeah, this album is their #1 seller of all time. It's 24 times platinum. It was number one.
Yeah.
I know. Well, we
yeah.
keep on talking about the Beatles, and we're like, oh, it was number one for 9 weeks. It's number one for 9 weeks.
Yeah.
And this is like a monster album and double album. Hey Jude was already in the face of this, so Apple was like they were doing great work. This is a masterpiece. There's very little that I have to say that's negative about this. I see a lot of Mel Evans being asked to be in the background. Some Yoko is in the background. We're up to the second song, which is Dear Prudence, and there was a resurgence of this song in the late 80s when Susie and the Banshee released it as a single, and it got very successful. Okay, so what's going on with Dear Prudence? And by the way, I love this song.
Yeah, Dear Prudence is certainly in the top 10, and some days it's in my top 5, and some days it's my favorite Beatles song of all. I mean, that's how much I love Dear Prudence. There's a lot going on with this song, and the thing that I believe drags you in, or pulls you in, I should say, is that it has a hypnotic quality to it. And the hypnotism that's going on is John's repetitive guitar picking. You know, once it moves around, of course, in the beginning, there's an introduction where he's kind of moving around harmonically, and then he finally lands on the chord, and he keeps picking the same chord. And I think we talked about this already, but again, it's a new way for John to be playing the guitar, because when he wrote this in India, of course, about Mia Farrow's sister Prudence, who didn't come out of her hut, she would just meditate all the time. And John was trying to lure her out of her hut by singing, come on out and play. The sun is up, the sky is blue, it's beautiful, and so are you, dear Prudence, won't you come out to play? Donovan Leitch was there, the famous Donovan from, what was that song called? Mellow Yellow, and of course Sunshine Superman, among many others. So he taught John and Paul, while they were all in India, how to do the finger picking. And John's guitar work on this song exemplifies that very blatantly and very clearly. That hypnotic, repetitive guitar picking. While that is going on, and you have John's melody, then you have Paul, this absolutely genius of a bass player. McCartney's melodic bass line juxtaposed to John's repetitive guitar picking. So while John's guitar part stays the same through the verses, Paul's bass line keeps moving, and it creates a contrapuntal melody. I mean, this genius. This is such musical genius that they were able to do this. And you put that all together, and then you have George's stinging lead guitar. It's just a piercing lead guitar on it. This is a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. And again, Ringo is gone. So it's Paul. Now there's only one drummer on this track. It's only Paul. And he plays an amazing drum pattern during the last chorus, where he's doing like these snare beats, a snare rhythmic pattern, which is incredible. It works perfectly. And there's something interesting that happens with the tone of the bass on the last chorus. It changes. And usually, when you lay down a bass part and you have a sound that you like, and the song pretty much has that sound throughout the song. But no. The Beatles were messing around with changing the sound of some of their instruments, and clearly in Dear Prudence you can hear how the bass becomes brighter. It's as if they added treble and a top end to the low part of the bass frequency. It's just a masterpiece. It really is. And as I said, some days it's my most favorite Beatles song.
It's interesting on this album, more than all the others, when they do harmonies for the backgrounds, you can actually hear the individual person. Like you can hear George light as day, or John or Paul. Like You can hear them when they're doing the backgrounds, and they're not as blended as they were before, where they were trying to sound very similar. Or the song has that vibe to it, where you can hear them individually. It's cool. It's a different sound completely because I don't think they spent as much time trying to get those backgrounds.
The blend.
Yeah,
the blend.
This more of the background, the dissonance was really important to have. And that's why I think it blows people away too. Is like, wait a minute, where are these backgrounds like that we were used to? It's awesome.
Absolutely.
The adult progression of who they are within that. We're talking 1968. So they've hit our shores 4 years ago, just 4 years ago. And this is what you get. So the third song is Glass Onion. There's something that I thought was really cool. I know you're probably going to bring this up. The Paul is Dead clue. Here's another clue for you all. Hold on.
The Walrus was Paul.
Yeah, it also says, I told you about the Fool on the Hill. They play a recorder. And that goes back to the Fool on the Hill
the
with the recorder
part. Yeah,
totally never caught that until I started doing research. I'm like, okay, here's the Paul is Dead clue. Got it. However, with the recorder, they're just giving you the clue. We talked about Glass Onion before. I said hash under a glass. You thought that was silly.
I never heard that. Never heard that before. No.
You never heard it before, and you never heard it again. After that. This is a fantastic song too. I mean, it's just great. Okay, so go ahead and tell me about the song.
Okay, Glass Onion. The thing that makes this unusual, and this is what John did, and he did it once before with I'm the Walrus, and the lyrics of I'm the Walrus, he referenced other Beatles songs. He referenced Lucy in the Sky, for example. But in Glass Onion, he's referencing, I can't remember, is it 6 or 7 Beatles songs. So that is very unusual. As you said when they said, I told you about the Fool on the Hill, I tell you, man, he's living there still. And then, of course, there's the recorder going on because on the original, Paul plays the recorder on Fool on the Hill on the Magical Mystery Tour album. And then the bit about, the Walrus was Paul. There's another clue for you all. So, John loved to play games. He loved to play with our heads, and he was certainly playing with our heads on Glass Onion. It doesn't say, for instance, I told you about the Glass Onion, or let me tell you about the Glass Onion. The title of the song is not in the lyrics, which again is another John move. Obla di obla da, obviously the lyrics are in there. Back in the USSR, the title is in the lyrics. But Glass Onion is strange in that sense. I don't think it's a great song. It's a very good song. And the other thing about it is that the ending, what the hell does the ending of the song have to do with the preceding material? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. Well, George Martin did this arrangement, and it has nothing to do with the song. I don't know why John did that. It doesn't make any sense to me. This is the avant-garde album. That's the only explanation. So it's kind of like, all right, well, let's put this on the end and see what it sounds like. Because they didn't do that before. The songs were more cohesive from beginning to end. You start off with She's a Woman one way, and it sounds like, the ending sounds like, for the most part, the entire song, et cetera, et cetera. But what the hell is this ending? Okay, it's an avant-garde album. That's the only explanation that I can come up with, Tom, for the ending. Don't you think the ending is completely out of character with what we just heard?
Yeah, it seems to me like it's an in joke, but it's also it's still a drug reference or some kind of, you're supposed to be high for this album. You're supposed to enjoy it, sit back and relax and enjoy it. And I think that this is that thing that sparks your mind. It's going in one way and it just kind of jolts you out. This whole album has that rumblings from one track to another. I don't know, it's hard to be really objective about this album because I love it so much. You know, like Glass Onion, you're like, wow, that's not really a good song, and I'm like, to me, this whole album just stamped awesome. So, and that's just because of how many times I played it and what I thought
Yeah.
about it and how I grew up with it. So it's really, really hard. And I guess if you pull this aside and look at these songs, like, you know, without it being a part of the sum, it may not be a good song. It may be just a big throwaway, and it has like the clues for it. It's not necessary. And I know that people were going to complain about Wild Honey Pie being not necessary. It's just it's a part of the. It is what it is, and I love that your takes on it because that's what I said. I can't be objective. I don't know how to be objective about this album.
Mm, 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 mm. Well, I didn't say. I said it's a good song. I said, but I don't think it's a great song. Is what I said.
And you're right, but
Yeah.
you know, I can't bring myself to say it out loud. You know, it's like like this is
Okay.
this is etched in my my psyche forever.
Psyche,
Yeah.
By the way, did you ever hear the one version of Glass Onion where it ends with someone like a soccer game? It's a goal! It's a goal! And it's like, you know, smashing glass, and then it's a goal! It's a goal.
It's on the Anthology album.
Yeah, it's on the Anthology. So there's another example that, you know, that is just as that's just as bizarre. So John obviously was experimenting and messing around with some unrelated ending, and he settled on George Martin's arrangement.
The next song is Obla Di Obla Da, a #1 song if released as a single. Was released in the 70s, and it did pretty good. I do remember it. It hit the top 10 in like 1977 in the Rock and Roll album. It was the theme song for a kids show on ABC. It has a shelf life that's really strong. I know that the Beatles, other than Paul, you know, didn't really like it. It's a great song in my opinion. Completely different than anything we heard as 4 tracks. I don't know any song that's like this from the Beatles. You know that would be similar. But what's your thoughts on Obla Di Obla Da?
There's only one Beatle who could have written it, and it's Paul, because it is so uplifting and happy. In a way, it has a similar vibration to Getting Better. You know, where it's getting better all the time. You better, better, better. You know, so everything's better. It's bright. You know, Paul is he's the happy-go-lucky guy at the Beatles, and so he had to write. He's the only one who could write this. And when you listen to it, you know, they're laughing. I mean, they're having a ball when they're recording this song. You know, and those background vocals are wonderful. La 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 la. I know how the life goes on. But the strange thing is that there were fights going on while they were recording this song. You know, John hated it. George hated it. You know, John walked out, stormed out, supposedly came back in and pounded out the piano introduction. It's really kind of a mystery. Because Paul claims that, oh, yeah, no, they all loved it when we were doing it, you know. There were no problems. But when you do any research, that's not the case. And yet, they were able, when they recorded it and did the final. I mean, when you listen to it, does it sound like there's any conflict going on with the 4 lads? Of course not, right? It sounds like they're just totally into it and having a ball. Doesn't it sound like that?
It's a party song. It feels
it's a party song.
It's a pub song. You know, it's designed to get the pub to sing along. It's a sing along song.
Yeah.
And
there's a couple of other things that make it interesting. Is that George Martin's arrangement of the 3 saxophones on the chorus, they're syncopated. So in other words, the sax parts are not playing on it's playing on and off the beat. It makes it syncopated. And that makes it even more dance-like. You just want to get up and you want to move when you're listening to this song. I always loved the sax parts. I thought the sax parts were absolutely perfect on this song. But there's also a story, which is a true story, Okay, so where did Paul get the idea? Well, he got it from this guy named Jimmy Scott, who had a band. He had a band called Obladi Oblada. And he used to say, as an expression, Obladi Oblada, life goes on, brah. And Paul lifted it. He absolutely lifted it, built a song around it. And when he talks about, Desmond as a barrow in the marketplace, there's another reggae reference because Desmond Decker was a reggae singer at the time. Paul got into trouble with Jimmy Scott. I don't know if you know this or not. But Jimmy Scott made a claim against Paul and sued him for violation of using his quote-unquote Obladi Oblada Life Goes On line. Jimmy Scott ended up in prison at one point. I don't know why he did, but one can only imagine during those wild times in the 60s. And so what Paul did, rather than settle or do something, in court, Paul bailed him out, is my understanding, And so that was Paul's way of making good with Jimmy. And then Jimmy dropped it because Paul posted bail, is my understanding. And the other thing that I find interesting, again, is because John hated the song so much, supposedly, and I think he did. But boy, he plays a mean piano on this. You would think that it would be Paul playing the piano on his song. Usually Paul plays piano on his songs. But no, it's John who hated the song. Go figure.
That's a great story. I never heard that before. I look at this song. If you remove, Paul has bass top 40 songs or number one songs. I look at this song. If you remove the bass from it, it would be a completely different song. Like Silly Love Songs, the bass is so important. Good Night Tonight has the bass is basically driving the whole song. Even Let 'Em In, I think Let 'Em In also is just if it wasn't for the bass, that song would be really weak. And in this case, it's the driving force of this song, I think. And you take that away in that style and the way he's doing it, you got a whole different song. And
Sure.
It's fantastic. It goes right into a 52-second Wild Honey Pie, which is just a knockoff. And I read on the Facebook pages that everyone hates it, but I don't. I think it's fantastic. I think it goes right with the style of the song. I don't understand why they would even say this is the worst song that the Beatles ever did, and I don't get it. But
as I mentioned earlier, the White Album is the Beatles' avant-garde album. That's why Wild Honey Pie is on the White Album. This is an avant-garde piece of music. Absolutely. So it is appropriate for the Beatles' avant-garde White Album. It's all Paul, and it's experimental, and he's sort of improvising in the studio. Yes, it is bizarre. You don't expect to hear, it's like, what the hell is this? Is the response that most people usually say when they hear this thing. And even when I heard it for the first time, I thought, what is this? This sounds kind of crazy. But it's just Paul, again, he's going along and he's adding a piece which it wouldn't fit on any other album but this album. It's avant-garde. It's an absolute avant-garde experimental piece of music. And that's why it's on the Beatles' White Avant-Garde album.
He's killing it on the acoustic guitar. Sounds awesome. Are we done with Wild Honey Pie?
Well, I just wanted to say that Paul he titled the song appropriately because it is wild. I mean, it's definitely wild and bizarre. I mean, his vocals are, listen to the vocals, right? Honey pie, honey pie, honey pie. I mean, good God, it is wild. So I got to give him that.
And then you have Honey Pie coming up later, which is a completely different.
Oh, well, that's not the wild one.
Yeah. It's a whole, you're like, wait a minute. There's a lot of Honey Pie going on here. Okay, so we're on to the next one. It just drips right into the continuing story of Bungalow Bill.
Yeah.
This song, out of all the songs, was the scariest one, and I have no idea. As a little kid, I was a little frightened by this song. I don't know why, but there's enough scary stuff on here for little kids. So it's a good debut of Yoko. Sounds like a lot of fun. I think John had the most songs on this album. I think he had 14. So he was able to kind of dump a lot of his catalog out here. What's your thoughts on this song?
It starts with this, like a classical nylon string guitar riff. So right away you're thinking, oh gosh, wow, Beatles are really playing a really nice guitar riff. Yeah, again, that's what you're thinking. It's Chris Thomas, I believe it was Chris, who found the sound library, at EMI. And they just, again, bits and pieces of things that have no relationship whatsoever. They go from Wild Honey Pie to this really beautiful solo nylon string classical guitar sounding bit into then a bunch of people singing a chorus, about some guy named Bungalow Bill. Again, it has nothing to do with the song. The same way that the ending of Glass Onion has nothing to do with the song. Okay, let's put this in here. Whatever. Let's just try it. It doesn't have to make any sense. But we accepted it. Maybe not at the time. And people look back at this album and say, oh, it's a masterpiece. It's the best Beatles album, et cetera, et cetera. We can get into that later. But looking at this song, it's in two parts. It's got this big, fun chorus. You've got all four Beatles singing on it, along with Ringo's wife, Maureen. And you've got Yoko singing on the chorus, too. It's a lot of fun. Hey, Bungalow Bill. It's just, it's kind of uplifting, kind of fun. And then all of a sudden, ooh, deep in the jungle where the mighty tiger lies. So it's a striking contrast between the chorus and the verse. And not only is it a big contrast lyrically and musically, but also in terms of the tempo. Because the tempo on Continuing Story of Bungalow Bill, it's 4/4. It's quick. It's a quick ride. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And then all of a sudden on the verse, it goes twice as slow. And we talked about John before, how John used to love to mix the meters and the tempos. This is a perfect example of that. I think it's a very, very, very good song. The ending, again, listen to the ending of this song. It's like, what the hell is going on with this ending? It's not an ending that you would anticipate. Absolutely not. And it sounds like, to me, the high notes of a bassoon. And then just, sort of arbitrary clapping going on. And then it just ends. So a crazy ending. Of course, that was the melody of the chorus on what I think is it's a mellotron, actually, but it sounds like, to me, although some people think it's a trombone, which I don't think it sounds like a trombone. And then, of course, there's the whole story. How did John write this story? These songs, most of the songs on the White Album, not all of them, but most of them, were written while they were in India. And do you know the story about Richard? I think his name was Richard Clark, or Richard. I think it was Richard Clark, and his mother. They went to the ashram as well. They were very wealthy. And Richard Cook, it's Richard Cook. And so they were there with the Beatles. And then one day, Richard and his mother arranged for a hunting safari, and they went out, and Richard had a rifle, and they came back, and Richard told what had happened. Told them the Beatles found out that he shot and killed a tiger. because the tiger supposedly had lunged toward the elephant. So he shot and killed it, and Richard was very proud of that. And John was not pleased. John was not impressed with that, and he thought it was a terrible thing that he shot and killed the tiger. And soon after that, Richard and his mother left the ashram, which is really quite an interesting story, isn't it?
I've never heard that one either. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It makes sense because it tells that story more or less.
Tells a story about this. Him and his mother went out. They went out hunting. Yeah, with his elephant and gun. Right. In case of accidents, he always took his mom. That's exactly what happened. The all-American bullet-headed Saxon mother's son. Yeah, exactly. So it's based upon, a real-life experience that John had while he was at the ashram. It's just another, what the hell ending is this?
But it goes right into the next song. I mean, FM started to perk up, right, in 1968, where they started to have a better, warmer sound, and this is a staple of FM rock radio, and that's great. It's a fantastic song, and no one gets sick of it. It's just a awesome song. Prince did a tribute to George Harrison, and for some reason that has a super high count on YouTube, and people are just blown by what they did to it, and the superstars that were on stage to accompany Prince. It was pretty awesome. But okay, so we get into While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Actually, George was doing a commentary about the discontent within the Beatles at the time. He was sad. He was sad about them not getting along. And as I mentioned earlier, there were a lot of tensions and there were a lot of arguing going on during the making of the White Album. So this song fit right in with what was going on within the Beatles at the time when they were recording the album. And the song was perfect for the White Album. And it's a very sad song. It is sad. And we all know who's playing the lead guitar now, but again, back in '68, I'm listening to this and going, oh, wow, man, George is really cooking on that lead guitar solo. You're like, wow, he's really making that guitar cry. His guitar was weeping, and of course, we found out later that it was his buddy Eric Clapton who plays the lead guitar in this song. Clapton was very reluctant to do it, because at that time, other than studio musicians or members of the London Symphony Orchestra that George Martin would bring in to play a string quartet or the harp, or the piccolo trumpet on Penny Lane, there were no other, musicians that were in the quote-unquote rock and roll coming in and playing with the Beatles at this time. So Eric he was like, no, I can't play on the Beatles record. And George was like, oh, no, it'll be all right. Just come on in, Eric. It'll be fine. So he convinced Eric to come in. And bringing Eric into the studio, then everybody was on better behavior because there was a guest in the studio when they were doing this. And originally, George had written this on acoustic guitar. And there is an acoustic guitar version of him on, I think it's on Anthology, one of the anthologies. It's one of the most popular Beatles songs ever. Right now, I talk to people, what's your favorite Beatles song? Many, many times I'll hear While My Guitar Gently Weeps from people. The interesting thing about this song, and there's a number of things interesting about it, is that John, I don't think John is even on the track, to be honest with you. Supposedly he plays electric guitar, but who the hell needs him playing electric guitar with Eric playing? He might be playing, and George is playing acoustic rhythm, so I don't really think that John is on this track. George also plays organ as well. Plays the big organ. You can hear organ prominently on the bridge of the song. And what's also interesting harmonically is that the verses are in A minor. And if you're going to be talking about weeping or crying, then you're going to be using a minor chord, because a minor chord sounds sad because of the way the triad is built. minor chords are sad sounding in general. Okay. But then when he goes to the bridge, he does what they call a parallel modulation of sorts, where he goes from A minor in the verses to A major. I don't know why nobody told you, which is very unusual to have two different key signatures with the same letter, A minor versus A major. So it's a masterpiece. I think this, hands down, is one of George Harrison's best songs. I mean, I know Something, of course, is a great song, right? And we know that Here Comes the Sun is a great Beatles song. I would put this in a way in front of Here Comes the Sun, believe it or not.
Well, I would too.
I really,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the longest songs too. Like this extended jam part at the end with the guitar solo
Yeah.
is kind of unheard of. It's very rock radio now, but these songs are coming in at like 3-4 minutes, and this is a lot longer.
This was like almost 5 minutes on this one.
Yeah, so it was
almost.
opportunity for them to breathe a
Stretch
little.
out.
Yeah, love it. Great. It's 8 songs on this side one, 23 minutes and 43 seconds, which is a long time to put a lot of material out in 1968 on one side, especially when they trained us to get maybe 13 minutes, 14 minutes, or an earlier Beatles catalog that you're not going to get that much on a side. So you got Happiness is a Warm Gun, and I mentioned Heroin and the NRA, and I love this song. I love the whole doo-wop vibe. I think it contradicts the message of the song. And what's your thoughts on this?
Happiness is a Warm Gun is John giving us a medley. This is John doing a medley. Actually, it's just 4 parts in this song. The 4th part, when he's going, happiness is a warm gun, and they're doing bang, bang, shoot, shoot, that's obviously doo-wop. That's the doo-wop section, right? But the beginning, she's not a good, oh, Mrs. Munt, oh, yeah. I mean, wow, what a beginning. Immediately his voice is in his lower register, and it's like, oh, gosh, what's he going to say now? She's well acquainted, with a man with a velvet touch, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess he gets into all these very abstract. Again, John is the master of abstract lyrics. This is another example of what is he talking about? A self-impression of his wife, which he ate and donated to the National Trust. What the hell does that mean? So we have that first part, right? But then we get into I Need a Fix. I need a fix because I'm going down. Well, I Need a Fix, obviously, is a heroin reference. And Yoko and John were doing heroin when the Beatles were working on the White Album. That's a fact. John says that they did. He says they never shot it up. They just sniffed it. But they were doing heroin one way or another. And so that's the reference. Now, again, the master of changing tempos, as I've talked about many times. She's not a girl who misses much is in 4/4. Then we go into I Need a Fix. It's in 3/4. It goes into, the waltz. Ding, 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 2, 3, 5, and the guitar is just magnificent. And then it goes into another section. Mother Superior jumped the gun. Now, what the hell does that have to do with she's not a girl who misses much and I need a fix? Absolutely nothing. Then we get into the Mother Superior jumps the gun. You want to talk about time signature changes? I mean, this is nuts. I mean, I wrote them out, and you'd have to count them. It's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, come on. Only John would come up with something like this. And this is the whole bit where we, Mother Superior jumps the gun, bang, boom, Mother Superior jumps the gun, bang, boom, boom, boom. It's just all over the place. And it is absolutely brilliant. I love it. I love musically. I mean, this song, again, is to me 4 different songs together. I love it. This is one of my favorite songs on the album. Absolutely brilliant. And it's loaded with, I think, certainly the last part, sexual connotations. I mean, bang, bang, shoot, shoot. Back then, when you had sex with someone, you'd say that you banged her. That really was a term that was used back then, B-A-N-G-E-D, so bang, bang, and then, when you're having sex, then, something happens and shoot, shoot, okay? So, without getting too graphic. All right, so.
Brooke, come on. It's a rated G show.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, you're right. It's very hypersexual.
Oh, yeah.
And it's weird
yeah.
for the Beatles. I mean, like you got Lovely Rita at the end where they're, and then you got.
Oh, yeah, they're moaning and groaning. Yeah.
And you got this. This is really like down and dirty and kind of raw, even though it's subliminal. It's interesting. I think it carries the whole song, the sexual imagery through this song. It's awesome.
But it's disguised, Tom. It's disguised.
Yeah, that's what I meant. It's like it's all it's hypersexual, but it's not.
Disguised.
Yeah.
Because this happiness is a warm gun. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So the trigger is feel my finger on your trigger. That means you're feeling your finger on the trigger of someone's gun. We didn't think it was Yoko's inner trigger, if you will. Okay. We didn't know that the bang, bang, shoot, shoot had any sexual connotation in 68. It was the bang, bang was from the gun, and the shoot, shoot was from the gun. So happiness is a warm gun, and again, the happiness is because the gun is warm because the gun has been shooting. But we didn't get any all that back then. It was hidden. It was disguised as a song about shooting a real gun. This is John's absolute brilliance as a writer. I mean, come on, folks. A masterpiece.
If we keep this in, I just let the people who listen that we just finished one album side and it took an hour and a half to talk about it. We have another album to go. This the second side of side 1. And are you okay? Do you need any water or anything?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Tom.
All right. The first song on side 1 is "Martha, My Dear." That is a very polished song. I think that he's the only one on it, right, or close to it.
Yes.
Him and Ringo.
He's the only. Yeah. No. There's no Ringo on it. Paul plays the drums as well.
Just him.
Just Paul, and of course George Martin did the string and brass arrangement.
Yeah, that brass arrangement is sharp as hell. This would be.
Oh my God.
This could be a number 1 song also. Not that it would be the first tier choice, but it's a really good song. And it's a great song to open up an album. And then the flip side is the second song that comes on it, which is even more overpowering. What's your thought of Martha, My Dear?
It's a masterpiece. One of my all-time favorite Beatles songs. Even though it's not about a neighborhood in Liverpool like Penny Lane, it does have a Penny Lane vibe about it. All Paul, and it's kind of like a combination of a classical sounding piece. It really does sound like a classical piano piece, especially in the beginning. And then it gets really bouncy, like it's almost like a stride piano going on. And everybody says, oh, well, Martha, it's about Paul's dog because Paul's sheepdog's name is Martha. Okay? It's not about Martha. Martha, the dog, is code. It's code. Remember now, this is the avant-garde album. Things are going on that we don't know about. Back then, we knew it was, of course, it's Paul's sheepdog, Martha, my dear. No. Song about Jane. Absolutely. Listen to the lyrics in that context, and you go, oh yeah, right, I hear that now. It is about Jane, but it's so cleverly written that it can be interpreted both ways. And again, that's brilliance to be able to do that.
Jane has been nothing but trouble.
Oh, the muse.
Yeah.
Incredible muse.
Yeah, he is the Adele. Like this is one sad song of his struggles with her. This song just rocks. It is crisp, clean. It's almost classical in its approach.
Yeah.
Again, 1968. You're like, what is this? And then I'm So Tired is the second song. It's weird to feel this depth of John. It's going to show up, I guess, in the Plastic Ono Band and some other things where he's tapping into some darker sides of him. You have to admit, it's a really good song. It's a cool song.
It's in two different sections, two different parts, and kind of like in a way, not like the way he changed the tempo in the continuing story of Bungalow Bill to a bright 4/4 to a slow 4/4. In this one, the tempo is the same, but he changes the feel. He changes the volume, and the beginning is his vocal is sleepy. It sounds like he is tired. Here, you there? I'm so tired. I haven't slept. Okay, John, you know what? We believe you. You sound very tired. And he does sound very tired in that part of the song. But then when you get into this sort of a bit of a pre-chorus, you say you put me on, but it's no joke. Doing no harm, I can't sleep, I can't sleep. My brain, it's 3 weeks, I'm going insane. And then I give you everything I've got, the little piece of mind. You say, that's rock and roll, So you got this dreamy verses going on. You get into the rock and roll, then it goes definitely into the rock and roll pre-chorus and then into the chorus, which is almost pretty much the same. It works brilliantly as two different pieces going on. Musically, they're seamless. They really do work together as one song, no doubt. And you've got John playing lead guitar along with George on this one. And then John's also playing some organ, and Paul is playing electric piano and bass. And at the very end of the song, Tom, we have to say something. Because at the end of the song, we hear gibberish. It's like, what the hell is going on now? Again, at the end of a John song, we've already established at the end of a number of John songs here on the White Album that John does something unexpected. Well, he threw in something here at the end, and this now goes into the Paul McCartney Death Hoax, because when you play it backwards, and you can hear it, and I've heard it, and I heard it back in 1969 when we were listening to all the clues and turning these albums backwards on our turntables, because we could do that back then. And I heard, and even to this very day, if you can play it backwards yourself and just reverse it through some software, it's Paul's a dead man, miss him, miss him, miss him. Paul's a dead man, miss him, miss him, miss him. Well, that's pretty clear to me. So John having fun, going along with the whole McCartney Death Hoax, and they're having a laugh. Did you hear that at the end? Have you ever played it backwards?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And what do you hear?
Same thing. Clear as day. It's not even masked like I Buried Paul or
No,
it's
very clear.
It's very clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great song though, and it's another like FM radio, rock staple. I know that when I read all my books, they always compare I'm Only Sleeping to I'm So Tired, and I don't know if it's just because it's the content of the song, but for some reason they always like to pair these two songs together, and I don't really see the connection.
Nah, I don't.
Yeah,
I
other
don't
than
either.
I'm
Just
tired,
because
I'm
he's
not sleeping.
sleeping,
I know that
I'm sleeping and I'm tired. Yeah.
I'm so tired. He just had insomnia while he was at the in India, and that's where this
Right. That's
started.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
So
right.
so here was another song that we're on the third song on one side too that I believe could have been a hit. And I know that a lot of jazz artists had recorded this song and made sure that it was on their album, which is Blackbird.
Could never be recorded by the Beatles, even though it's on the Beatles album. This is solo Paul. That's all it is Paul.
This
Yeah,
song would have been felt really good in the McCartney album because of
yeah, because there's not much going on. The guitar work. Hats off to Paul. I mean, this guitar playing exemplifies him as being an extremely good guitar player. This is not an easy song to play on the guitar. It's not like you're playing some 3-chord rock and roll riffs or something. This is quite advanced guitar playing. And it was inspired by Johann Sebastian Bach's Bourrée, actually, in E minor. So there's the musical inspiration for it, and that's why it sounds so classical. Baroque classical, if you will. Those are the roots of this song. And then he mixed in, the bird, the sound effects of the birds. But it's solo Paul. No one else is on it except him. And this is sort of something that we're going to discover on the White Album. That we're going to discover that not all the Beatles are on all of the tracks. I mean, it's not something new necessarily, because we also discovered that for instance, on Revolver, not all the Beatles were on all the songs. So it's not something entirely new. And also on Pepper, not all the Beatles were on all of the songs. So, and supposedly Paul heard the crowing of a blackbird when he was in India. He heard it one night. And then that was his, quote unquote, his inspiration. And then years later, he claims, oh no, it was about a black girl, the civil unrest in the U.S., So I don't buy it.
Being a Beatle fan, I agree with you. I read these books. I've never heard this until he started going on tour, and he mentioned that that's the reason for this song. It never showed up. No mention whatsoever. All of a sudden, in the late 80s, he's like introducing the song and building this up as an anthem. It was never an anthem. It was never intended to be an anthem, I thought. And when I'm like, oh, okay, but it's still awkward. It's an awkward. It's if it's an anthem, it's a very disguised, awkward anthem. It's not a good one. The song's awesome. I think everyone should play it. It's beautiful. Whatever meaning
it's a beautiful song. It's absolutely gorgeous song.
Whatever meaning you get out of it, it will always be positive, and it's a great song. And it's another amazing ballad of Paul McCartney, of one of his strong ones of all time. And then we go right into Piggies, and I don't know where Monty Python was at that time, but I know Peter Sellers was around. It was, very satirical, and this is a very satirical song, and they name names here. George does have a point of view, and he's bitter again. That's something that George never is sarcastic and bitter.
Yes, the Piggies, George, anti-establishment, absolutely, no doubt about it. The lyrics are pretty, I'd say, blatant. They're on the nose, as they say. Then there's no disguise here in terms of what he's saying, in my opinion. And it's got that wonderful harpsichord played by Chris Thomas, who actually produced it because George Martin decided to take some time off. I think George Martin at this point, too, realized that the tensions were so high. This is when Jeff Emmerich around this time, Jeff Emmerich quit. I'm not saying right when they were doing Piggies, but just when they were doing the White Album. I mean, for Jeff Emmerich to quit working with the biggest band in the world, those tensions have to be pretty damn high for him to do that.
Emmerich quit. George quit. Ringo quit.
Ringo quit.
Yeah, and then
Ringo quit.
George Martin went on vacation. It's not pretty.
Yeah, George Martin went on vacation. Yeah.
They also
George Harrison didn't quit. He waited until January of '69. He waited a little longer.
He wanted to quit, but then they were using different. They were all in different studios, like working on their own projects, and
right.
Yeah. So this is way out of character of George. The style is of the song, but how cool is it? It's a really cool song.
Oh yeah, it really is. And what's nice about it is that the vocal. Again, I mentioned they were messing around with doing different sounds with voices and instruments. George's vocal on the bridge. In their life, there's something rocking. What they need, damn good rocking. It's really super bright. It's brighter than his voice on the verses. So they were having a ball in terms of at least doing more experimentation with the production of the songs. And then John's only contribution, which is a very unusual one, is that John's doing the grunting, making the pig noises.
He did a good job.
Yeah, he did a very good job. Yeah. Nice work there doing the piggies there, Mr. Lennon. But other than, his contribution he did some backing vocals along with Paul. But for the most part, George is doing most of the instrumentation. He's doing the lead and the harmony vocals, acoustic guitar, and then, of course, it's that harpsichord that really makes a difference. And not to mention, before George Martin took a holiday, he did do a string arrangement, or he maybe did it when he got back. But the strings on this song are brilliant, of course. So it's a combination of, it's like, well, what's the genre? What is the genre of this song, Piggies? Well, what do you think it is? Is it pop? Is it classical, baroque? It's both. It's a fusion. This is a fusion song. And it's a very, very good one. There's nothing wrong with it. And I enjoy it. And, George, it's not certainly, you can't compare it. Any of George's songs on the White Album with Well, My Guitar Gently Weeps, because, Well, My Guitar Gently Weeps is such a monster masterpiece. But what he did do on this one is he pulled the John at the end, like you had mentioned. It's like, John had these unexpected endings on Glass Onion and the continuing story of Bungalow Bill. So now it's George's turn when he goes, one more time, and then the strings and the coda, and then more John snorting like a pig. Very strange ending, but somehow it works, doesn't it?
Awesome song, and it goes right into one of my childhood fearful songs, where I was scared of Rocky Raccoon, and now we have him with his Giggins Bible. Tell me about this song.
This is a very popular song, especially when it came out and into the 70s. And it's a great Paul song because, Paul's a great storyteller. And this is a great story, about the Wild West and being in the saloon and that whole thing. And I still like it very much. I think it's a very good song. John plays quite a bit on this song. He plays a 16 bass and a harmonium, and it's the last song that he played the harmonica on. And there's also George Harrison is playing bass, so we have two bass players on this. Again, why do we need two bass players? I don't know. And then the other thing that makes it so wonderful and perfect in terms of the Wild West saloon setting is that piano solo played by George Martin. Are you kidding me? I mean, that honky-tonk piano is absolutely perfect, and it's absolutely brilliant. And that's the reason why I like the song. You know, Paul, of course, is playing the acoustic guitar. He tells the story, you know, about the showdown. And the other thing that's interesting about it, again, we're looking at the White Album. You know, what does the song have to do with any of the songs that we've discussed thus far? Absolutely nothing. What does the song have to do with songs that we're going to talk about on the second disc? Absolutely nothing. It's just another example of the extreme diversity and eclecticism that exists on the Beatles' White Album. Paul's guitar always sounded to me, and even to this day, sounds just a little out of tune, just a little bit, like a lot of acoustic guitars are when people are playing in bars and saloons in the Wild West.
Which gets into Don't Pass Me By, which is the sixth song. They got Ringo Starr, a song that he's billed as writing. I love the bass. I love the drumming on this. And I really love the organ playing. And I don't know who's doing the organ because it's if you strip that away, the song it has to be something completely different.
There's no organ on it.
What is that?
Yeah, what you're referring to is, again, you know, how the Beatles were experimental. Paul played the grand piano, and then Ringo played the tack piano. But when they recorded them, the pianos were recorded through a Leslie speaker. And it's that Leslie speaker, right, that's, you know, keeps spinning, right? You know what a Leslie speaker does, right? It spins around, right? It creates that sort of hurdy-gurdy sound is what you're referring to. And that's why it sounds like an organ. By the way, this is Ringo's first solo song that he wrote. But the funny thing is that we're hearing it on an album at the end of 68, but it goes back to 62. This song has been kicking around with Ringo for 6 years. Yeah.
Out of all those times they were searching for material for him, it's a wonder they didn't pull this one out.
Yeah, well, because John and Paul had written songs for Ringo. So when the master writers were saying, hey, we got a song for you, Ringo, I don't think Ringo was about the song I was thinking about in 62. I don't think Ringo, you know what I'm saying? I think that John and Paul basically pulled their weight. That's what I think. Yeah, it's a fun song. The thing that makes the song so incredible is what? It's the violin. Are you kidding me? This violinist, his name is Jack Phelan. He's a master. He's more like fiddling, if you will. You know, he's fiddling with the violin, fiddle player. Boy, that violin part makes the song. I can't imagine this song without that violin. I mean, I'm sure you agree that violin is just amazing what he does. And this was not usually when you're dealing with a violin or a cello or strings or brass or any of those type of instruments, woodwinds or what have you. George Martin writes the part out. Every note is written for the instrumentalist. The big exception, of course, is the huge crescendo in A Day in the Life, the orchestral crescendo. But aside from that, this guy, Jack Phelan, George Martin did not write his part out. You can hear the way Jack is playing. But what he chose as notes, it's brilliant. That violin part is absolutely brilliant. The guy needs to get more credit. Jack, I think you're brilliant. I'm giving you more credit, the credit that you deserve on Ringo's Don't Pass Me By. The other thing that we have to talk about, because clues of the Paul McCartney death hoax are going on in this album.
You were in a car crash and you lost your hair.
Hello? I've been waiting for you, but you don't come up to my door. Yeah, gee, this is not masked. I mean, this is blatant lyrics. What the hell is he talking about? Who was in the car crash? You lost your hair? Wow. That was a huge clue. So we have to mention it because it is. Now, the sound of the drums also needs to be mentioned because the sound of the drums, they don't sound like any other drums on this record. I use the adjective fat. They sound fat. The way that they're mic'd, they're engineered and produced. I've never heard drums sound like this before. Fat sounding drums, which works perfectly with his song "Don't Pass Me By."
Okay, so we just got a song that's only 1 minute and 41 seconds. Why don't we do it in the road? It's another overtly sexual song. I don't think there's any masking this one other than what "Do It" is. It's a Paul song, correct? There's nothing more.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all Paul and Ringo. Paul and Ringo.
So it's a short one. I love the drums. I love what's going on with the song. It'd be interesting to hear what this full song would sound like.
Well, Paul had the song in his head, and George and John were doing something else in one of the other studios. So Paul said to Ringo, "Let's go and do this one," and they did it real quick. And Paul's playing everything except for the drumming. It's like piano, electric guitar, the bass, the clapping. And he got the inspiration when he was in India. And the inspiration is that he saw these two monkeys who were getting it on in the road. They were having fun with each other, shall we say. So Paul's going, oh, well, why don't we do it in the road? Why don't we act like two monkeys, basically, and get it on with each other? So that was the inspiration. And the thing that I love about this song, I mean, musically, it's very predictable. It's just three chords. It's one of those three-chord songs. Is Paul's vocals. I mean, I love his vocals on this song. I mean, he's growling, and then he jumps up. Whoa, do it in the road. He jumps up on the high falsetto. Fantastic. It's a throwaway. I mean, this is not a great song, okay? This is not a great song. It's a good song. It's an interesting song. Does the album need this song? No. Does it fit in this album? Yes. Because it's unlike any other song on the album. That's it for the Why Don't We Do It in the Road.
And then you get a really conventional song with "I Will," which is something that could have been written in 1966 or 1965.
Yeah, it could have been 65. It could have been on Beatles 65, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I mean it's a classic Paul song. Beautiful, la la la. The whole arrangement of this song. I was just gonna sing it, but I realized it wasn't coming out right. La 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 la.
Yeah, it's one of Paul's another beautiful Paul ballad. He's doing not only the lead vocal, but he's also doing the harmony as well. And the sound of the guitar, the acoustic guitars, they sound, again, they were experimenting, with the recording of the instruments. I use the word silvery. It's like their silvery sound. Gorgeous sound of the acoustic guitars. I don't know how they did it. I've never heard an acoustic guitar sound like this before I Will, or even after I Will. It's a very unique sound, the way that they produced and engineered the sound of Paul's acoustic guitar playing. And he plays wonderful acoustic guitars, plural guitars. He's playing more than one acoustic guitar part. Now, there's no George on this song, which is interesting. I don't know why. Maybe because Paul wanted to play all the acoustic guitars, which he did. John doesn't play any guitar. He just plays some percussion, and Ringo plays some bongos. But here's the mind blower. I've been listening to the White Album ever since December 1st, 1968. Okay. I'm living in Los Feliz, a part of Los Angeles, in the late 70s. I don't know, 79 probably. Listening to the White Album. And now I have these high-end recording studio speakers in my living room. And I'm listening to this song. And I'm going, oh my God. Listen to the bass part. McCartney is doing the bass part with his voice. Do, 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 do. And I thought, oh my God. It took me, 11 years to discover that. Again, innovation, genius, brilliance. Have you ever heard of anybody doing a bass part vocally, a vocal bass part? No. In 1968, anybody was doing vocal bass parts, and it escaped me for 11 years. Did you know that he was doing a vocal bass part?
Now I'm going to have to listen to it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You'll hear it now that I've mentioned it. Yeah. Amazing. Brilliant. I love it.
And we're ripping through another hour. So we're up to 2.5 hours to talk about the first album of the White Album. And half of what I'm saying is meaningless. Wow.
Yeah.
This is now, just by doing research, you're saying half of this is about his mom, but half of it is about Yoko. I feel that it's all his mom, but I could be wrong. I don't know why he would put Yoko into it, but this is where I need your help. You tell me what's going on with this song.
Okay. This is the only solo John during the Beatles recording period as a band. It's the only song that he's solo John. And it's appropriate because he's singing and lamenting about his mother. Again, Donovan comes into the picture. That way that John is playing that acoustic guitar was because Donovan taught him how to fingerpick the guitar, right? But Donovan also helped him with some of the lyrics. Donovan came up with Seashell Eyes and Wendy's Smile, and he doesn't get any credit for that. Again, John was George, they were all in India, along with Donovan, with the Maharishi, and that's what John wrote, the song with Julia. Okay, John's vocal has got to be the most tender vocal, I think, I've ever heard up to this point.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It is so half of what I say is meaningless, but I say it just to reach you, Julia. And then there's an overlap because the ending part of Julie on then the next line Julia begins. So there was some double tracking of the vocals to get that effect. Very loving, tender vocal by John. Okay, where does Yoko come into the picture? She does. Because she had come into John's head in his mind, big time. When he was in India, he couldn't wait because Yoko would send him letters and postcards, I think, every day while he was in India. John was craving for her while he was in India. So, Yoko, when John says ocean child in the lyrics, well, the word Yoko, the name Yoko, Japanese name, of course, means child of the sea. So rather than saying child of the sea, John says ocean child. And that's where Yoko comes into the lyrics of the song.
Ocean child calls me.
Yes, and she does. She was calling him. And he was being very, very clear about it. Well, we didn't know what he was talking about. She was calling him through letters and postcards.
I just have to say, just to veer off, I know we're really talking along with this. She had said that she didn't know who the Beatles were before she connected with these guys. I find that really hard to believe.
I don't believe would have to have been living
in another
somewhere
planet.
On another planet.
The rest of the world.
And some people believe she is from another planet.
Yeah.
So maybe
the rest of the world caught on. There's no reason why she wouldn't at least. She was diligent.
Oh yeah, no.
Diligent.
Yeah.
If it wasn't Paul, it was John. So she had ulterior motives. But anyways, I love this song. I think it's a precursor to the Plastic Ono Band. Could have easily been on this album. And if you think about it, John's like vocal techniques from "I'm So Tired" to "Happiness Is a Warm Gun" to "Julia" is really, this is a good John album. He's really showing some interesting things here on this album.
Absolutely. The other thing I wanted to point out, which is kind of interesting, is that on the White Album, we have solo Paul, acoustic guitar, right? Blackbird. And now we have solo John, acoustic guitar, Julia. I'm surprised that we didn't have a solo George acoustic guitar. That would have rounded it out. But it's just kind of interesting that they both are doing solo work. Again, the White Album it's the solo Beatles working together. It's not the Beatles. It's not the Beatles. It's solo Beatles. That's what it is, in my opinion, as they're arguing and fighting with each other, which is really sad. Because they just came back from meditating and finding inner peace.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I looked at it. We were going to talk about this a week ago, and I was thinking, okay, they bit off more than what they could handle. So you have the Apple label, and here they're turning around trying to find artists that will be on the label. They have a clothing line. They have electronics. Magic Alex in the corner doing things.
Magic Alex.
You got the Screwballs, coming out. They're starting to work on Yellow Submarine. They really if they would have just said, look, we can't do all this other stuff. Apple Core is now theirs, and instead of having people run it, they're begging friends, please run this for us. And money is flying out the door. Things don't make sense. They're asked to respond to things that they didn't have to without Brian. So, the inner peace thing was really short lived, and now it's like, wow, this running a company to this scale is work. It's business, and that's they're artists. They weren't businessmen, and obviously find out. But, that's where everyone hated the business element of it. And they had a lot of ideas, and none of them really kind of panned out. But if by chance they would have said, look, okay, we can't, let's not bring these people on. Let's not do this. Let's not do that. Let's just focus on what we can handle. They could have been better. But then you also had the Yoko stepping in and John's interest going elsewhere, and it was just a recipe for disaster.
You're absolutely correct, and I think you hit it right on the head when you mentioned Brian Epstein. If Brian was alive during this period, it would have been a completely different situation.
Yeah, he would have had his own people. He would have. I didn't mean to interrupt, but.
Well, because Brian knew how to take control of them. He was the only one that they would listen to, really, because he made them superstars. So he was so sorely needed in '68. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
He wasn't there. So therefore, they're trying to run their own business. They're not businessmen. As you said, they're artists. They're musicians. They're brilliant writers. They're not businessmen. They used to take turns going into Apple trying to run the bit. One day George goes in, He doesn't like it. He goes out, and the next day Paul comes in, and then he takes a break, and then John comes in. I mean, it was a freaking mess. Now, I'll tell you this, and I know this to be true. Francie Schwartz, and I don't know if we talked about her before or not, but she's on Birthday, which we'll get into during the next session. She sings background vocals. Francie Schwartz was the girl who went to Apple with a screenplay wanting Apple to produce her movie. Paul sees her, Jane's out of town. Paul ends up having an affair with Francie. Francie wrote a book about her time with Paul. I met Francie once because she lives out here, and I met her. She told me a story one day, 68, after or around the time when they were doing Hey Jude. Paul said, come on, we're going up to the pool. You know, the pool, of course, is Liverpool. And they went up to Liverpool, and Paul made the rounds to some of the pubs, you know, that he used to go to. And he would have a great time and sing and play the piano and drink quite a bit. And then it was raining one night after doing all that. And this is what she told me. And I think it's true. I don't think you or many people have heard this story. He got out of his car, and it was pouring rain, and he started pounding the pavement with his fists, screaming, I can't take it anymore. I can't freaking take it anymore. The pressure of the Beatles, of being in the Beatles in 1968. That's one hell of a story, and I believe it's true.
You know, they're talking about their thoughts about Vietnam. They're talking about Paul finally comes out about his LSD, which gives the comments about that and their drug use. And then they're still burning records in America about, you know, there's still a backlash in America. It's a lot. When Brian, they said, oh, Brian had nothing to do. That's why he committed suicide. That's not true. He had a drug overdose. His job was actually getting more complicated. He was going to run Apple, and they would come in and give their thoughts about it, and then they walk away. That was his baby, and that was, you know, the machine that was going to, you know, go to the next level for the band. But boy, once he was gone, they should say, we need to shut this machine down. This is not going to work for us. But, you know, the pressure of being a Beatle is immense, and I get it, you know.
Yeah, that's why I told you that story about the pressure that McCartney was feeling.
I can see it
at that time. Yeah, I can see it too. I actually see him doing that.
Okay, so here we are. We're at the first album completed of the Beatles Come to America. It's the White Album. Obviously, it's going to be an epic. We have another album to go. We will reconvene at a future time. The Beatle Guru, you did extreme work today. You're going to sleep well tonight.
Thank you, Tom.
That Beatle DNA was squeezed out of you hard today. That's for sure. But
I need a nap now. Yeah, take a Beatle nap now.
It's actually really interesting your take on the avant-garde, and obviously the tape loops that are coming, and the Yoko influence, and them being exposed, the London scene, and also all the artists that are predominant at the time. And if someone said, what does that time look like? It's this album.
It's the avant-garde Beatle album. That's what it is.
All right, so I'll let you go. All right, thank you.
Tom, thanks, Faye. It was great. I think we did great today. Yeah, good job.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Next episode, The Beatles, the White Album, the second record. Now enjoy an original Brooke Halpin composition, Celebrations.
The future's here, it's ringing clear. We were meant to fly. Forget the past, we're free at last. No need to sit and cry. People despair, thinking life isn't fair, keeping all they can share inside. Wake up and see how good life can be. Come on out tonight. Celebration, let's have some fun. You're invited, everyone. Celebration, forever young. Come and get it, the party's on. The road is rough, but don't give up. You will be alright. Take your time, enjoy the ride. You'll make it home tonight. People despair, thinking life isn't fair, keeping all they can share inside. Wake up and see how good life can be. Come on out tonight. Celebration, let's have some fun. You're invited, everyone. Celebration, forever young. Come and get it, the party's on. Celebration, celebrate. Celebration, celebrate. Celebration, celebration. Let's have some fun. You're invited, everyone. Celebration, forever young. Come and get it, the party's on. Celebration, let's have some fun. You're invited, everyone. Celebration, forever young.
End of episode.